everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters. With your questers, Josh and Dan, I'm Dan.
And I'm Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things tutelical. I'm going Latin for the last couple episodes. Why not? Because tonight we're going to talk about Zarass's Chargers, the next orc nation of Cara Fahd, orc tribe in the nation of Cara Fahd, if I can get my words together in the proper order. So if you have any questions for us, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com, and we will pick Josh's lovely brain over there and see what he has to think about all these things that you have questions on. So this is a short entry in the nation of Cara Fahd, but we've been going in order of largest tribe to smallest tribe. I was expecting a smaller entry, but this is a kind of a different entry entirely. This is all in letters, back and forth.
Yeah. This is the first tribe, and this is a very small tribe, but this is the first tribe that really is being set up as an antagonist faction.
I agree.
We did have with Assok's Armbreakers that they split from another tribe that did not join Cara Fahd.
Yeah.
And was set up as a tribe that sees Cara Fahd as kind of a rival, and the leader of that tribe sees Krathis as sort of a threat to his own power. But they are not part of Cara Fahd. This one is dealing with Zarass Icethought. It's sort of dealing with a couple of things. It's dealing with the family dynamics of Zarass and her father and her brother, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But it's also dealing with something that is a bit of old magic, a bit of weird magic that is going on.
Yeah.
And how that is in part affecting Zarass.
Exactly. So she is the daughter of Terath the Contemplative, and he and his chargers remain in Throal. By the way, tutela is the way is to charge in Latin. It has like 9 different meanings. This is the to protect and to care for and to combat. So Zarass, so in the letters back and forth, he's hoping that she'll mature and kind of come to her senses and be honorable with things. And she is absolutely having none of it. She took her 200 allotted cavalry from her father and joined Cara Fahd against his wishes, because she sees Cara Fahd as this nation that is going to absolutely dominate everybody else, take control of the world, and live up to what she considers the orc potential of, yeah, we're here, we're the best, we're in charge. And so she's an interesting character, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Part of what's going on is the family dynamics. We've got Terath the Contemplative, who is the commander of Terath's Chargers.
Yeah.
Which is generally considered one of the best orc cavalries in Barsave.
Yes.
His cavalry is essentially full-time employed by Throal. They are not, I don't think, technically Throlic citizens, but they have a contract to serve as Throlic cavalry.
Yes.
Technically, they're a mercenary band, but the only work that they do for the most part is with the Kingdom of Throal. Terath thought highly of King Varulus. Part of the reason that he is called the Contemplative is that he is thoughtful, he has read a lot of books, thinks highly of what King Varulus was trying to build, and has transferred some of that esteem to Nedin.
Yeah.
If we're talking about at the time of the Cara Fahd book was written, this was prior to the Second Theron War, so Nedin is still alive and is King of Throal. His cavalry is paid well, and so he is voluntarily and willingly fights for them.
Yeah.
Terath has 2 children, Zarass, who we've already mentioned, and his daughter, and then his son, Earal Bloodstroke. He doesn't recognize how serious the rivalry between them is.
Yeah.
Earal is the older son. He is lined up effectively to be the next commander when his father retires or is killed. He is cheerful and gregarious and commander of, one of the larger detachments of the cavalry, has spent quite a number of years in contact with Throal and Bartertown and the citizens there, and is even more enamored's not quite the right word, but he is he appreciates Throal and he has strong positive feelings for them and isn't sure what he would do if the contract were ever to be dissolved.
Yes.
And it's actually an interesting question that we have not given any thought to whatsoever, is what is the status of that relationship here in the post-Second War era?
Good point.
With the new royal family.
Yeah.
Varulus had that arrangement with them. Nedin carried that on. Terath's Chargers were probably involved pretty heavily in the Second Theron War in some capacity. But how much of that would be carried forward in the post-war era and the new royal family and the new political situation in Throal? It may be a situation where, due to their increasing isolationism, that they may not have that contract in place anymore. But that's not something that we have given any thought to or addressed in any way, so that's still kind of up in the air.
It's a back burner item.
Earal, it mentions back in the original Barsave box set where he's got a little bit of information about him, is that one of his thoughts is that if the contract does not continue, that he may leave Terath's Chargers and volunteer to actually serve in the Throlic army and maybe bring some of his followers with him as part of that.
Yeah. Because
Zarass, on the flip side, is rather bitter. She does not appreciate how much her father and brother appear to be enamored of Throal. She sees the relationship that is in place with the Chargers as one that is, yes, we're getting paid for it, but Throal, the dwarves of Throal, and here she's kind of talking more broadly about not even necessarily King Varulus or Nedin, but the Throlic nobility and so forth, particularly the Old Guard, don't really regard the orcs well, and that we may be getting paid, but we are not respected, and she's just basically bitter and is upset and jealous.
Yes, she knows that the dwarves see them as tools and not equals, or
and she thinks that it's only a matter of time before the Kingdom of Throal will betray them or use them in a conflict that is not of their choosing.
Yes. And
cause problems for that. So Zarass is kind of like an angry, bitter, rebellious child. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly how I would describe her.
Yeah. And so when Cara Fahd was reestablished when that whole conflict arrived with Krathis Gron and the Declaration, Zarass takes that opportunity to grab a couple hundred of warriors and ride for Cara Fahd with them.
Yeah.
Against her father's wishes, and her father's kind of like, you can come back. Send them back. They've left families behind here. They want to know what's going on. You foolish child. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you did not go about this the right way.
Yeah. Hastily and short-sighted.
And short-sighted and whatnot. And she's like, you're a fool.
I mean, that's how her letter starts.
Yeah. You have your nose firmly planted in the dwarf's backside, and you are... She doesn't quite use the word, but there's a very strong indication that she believes that the Chargers have been corrupted by the ease and decadence and softness of the dwarves of Throal, and says, oh yeah, Krathis welcomed us. She knew you were a coward. Mm-hmm. She's being pretty nasty and pretty bitter.
She's petulant.
But then her letter goes even further, and this is where the antagonist angle comes up, is she basically says, and now Krathis is starting to talk to the dwarves and is starting to become infected by the same softness that has damaged you. And if that happens, I'm going to put a stop to it. That if Krathis does not do what Zarass thinks is necessary, Zarass is not above seizing the throne for herself.
Oh, yeah, she's got ambitions.
Yeah. She says, the next time I speak to you, and it will not be me coming to you, it will be you coming to me and begging to try and take your place as the father of the ruler of Cara Fahd. She's very clearly got some pretty big ambitions and a sizable chip on her shoulder.
Yeah, the size of a life rock.
Yeah. And then coupled with all of this, she has uncovered in the southern jungles of Cara Fahd this ruin that she is convinced is hugely significant. She doesn't really know what it is, only that it is old, and she is obsessed with it.
Yes.
Absolutely obsessed with it. There is later in the book on page 92 of the Cara Fahd book, there's a section that's talking about of people and places beyond the tribes. It does have a little section on the mystery that holds Zarass Icethought. A city, a tower almost, a city almost intact, a vast tower rising from the center. The individual whose sort of journal excerpt this is someone who followed Zarass, is like, I took a look at this place and I was like, oh, this is bad. It's another message like, there's something off about this place. This place is bad, but Zarass is not capable of seeing it. Something has affected her, and she is obsessed with trying to figure out what's going on, but it's bad.
Bad juju.
I don't trust it, and something has touched her and affected her, and I don't know what it is, but she will not listen to reason. This thing has grabbed her mind in some capacity, and we don't know what the situation is. Yeah.
It's like she's in I can't say a cultish trance, but she's kind of a zealot about Cara Fahd. She's hidebound, narrow-minded. She's like toxic masculinity from a female orc. That's kind of an interesting thing to put out there. But she is arrogant till the day is long. And so...
Longer, even.
Yes. She's... That grudge, that chip on her shoulder is very big. Because when she replies to her father... Terath the Contemplative, she absolutely calls being part of Throal basically a dwarf toady in her words. So has absolutely zero respect for anything non-orc. So little racist there as well. Says that any orc in Cara Fahd who can fight has real respect. Okay, there's your toxic masculinity right there. Says Krathis Gron awarded her 2 times as much land as needed because she's that important and that grandiose. And that the Elf Eaters tribe also followed her out of Throal as well. So, claiming...
We'll talk about them another time.
Yes, probably more than she's looking for. Anyway, but also claims that her chargers live as their ancestors did, living off of nature's bounty and small western villages by raiding them because they are not worthy of the lands that they were given. And will not allow dwarf-style buildings in her land within Cara Fahd. And... that her chargers roam freely and their horses graze freely as well. And so that no one else, not Krathis, not her dad, nobody understands orc freedom like she does. Little zealot character. Just saying.
And then we have a sidebar sort of post comment from Getaft Allthought, who's like, yeah, she's down there in the south and she's a little scary. She exaggerates her troops' capabilities. She's gained only a few hundred more followers, mostly locals, and they have more enthusiasm than training. She's not kind. Her people are bloodthirsty, but even they are like grasping for anything to hold them together, to give them some kind of sense of pride. But she is angry and frustrated, and that makes her dangerous because somebody who is smart enough to take advantage of that, or something smart enough to take advantage of that, mentions, the horrors, could turn her into something very, very dangerous indeed. And while he doesn't go out quite so far as to say that she is an active threat, she's a wild card. She's dangerous. Fortunately, she's not actually a particularly great leader. there aren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they're down there mucking about in the southern jungles, so we're not really concerned about them right now. But if you're going to go deal with her, be careful.
Yeah, because it sounds like, from the way this all reads, it sounds like the group that followed her is a dangerous group of wannabes, like you said, enthusiasm but no skill, that are now led by an arrogant zealot. So that's kind of a dangerous combo.
Yeah.
Right there.
And an arrogant zealot who could potentially be manipulated very easily.
Yes. As long as it aligns with her vision.
Yeah. It's what makes her even more of a threat potentially, is that if somebody gets their hooks into her, somebody smart is the undertone there. that if somebody smart gets their hooks into her, they could turn her into a particularly useful tool.
Yes. Either a patsy or
a horrors could make things very, very bad for them.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's not as clearly spoken, but Theron agents could probably manipulate her into being an internal threat that could weaken Cara Fahd.
Yeah, because she already says being any alliance with Throal is cowardice and betrayal to Cara Fahd. So she's already on that path. And so just needling that a little further, either she'll be a patsy or a martyr. Take your pick.
Yeah. Either the Therans or the Denerastus would find her to be a prime agent of chaos and probably would be able to manipulate her without too much difficulty, given her zealotry. But fortunately, the other thing that's kind of keeping her occupied are these ruins that she found, and there's a little bit more information about those that's in the very back of the Cara Fahd book.
Yes. The
remains are a citadel, which is the largest care in Cara Fahd, which was settled by Theron's sympathizers from Landis, who took orc slaves in with them. Mm-hmm. Just after the Scourge, the citadel was the site of a battle between Dis and Locost.
Oh, wow.
Between the actual passions themselves.
Yeah.
They started off with it being a sort of symbolic fight between the inhabitants, Locost supporting and empowering the orc slaves, Dis sort of supporting and empowering the Theron overlords in there. But all of the inhabitants basically wiped each other out as a result of this conflict. Now, this was not during the Scourge. This is shortly after the Scourge. So before Cara Fahd was reestablished, the Citadel opened up, things would happen. As it says here in the book, the ruins contain a curse on a scale beyond anything name givers can cast.
Oh, dang.
For the purposes of astral sensing and traveling in astral space, consider the region surrounding the Citadel the equivalent of a corrupt region. So on the scale of like what the horrors can do.
Yeah.
The curse on the place makes its pattern alternate with Dis's rigidity and Locust's chaotic freedom. Any character who spends more than a few minutes touching its walls must make a willpower test to resist the effects. They must repeat this test for each day they remain, increasing the difficulty number by 1 per day. If they leave and return, it begins again from the base difficulty. Successful resistance means only slight compulsions that favor the activities of one passion or the other. For example, Zarass has been resisting the call of Dis, but has developed a compulsive desire to stay and catalog every stone of the Citadel, though she will return to normal if forced to leave. If the character fails the willpower test, the effects are far worse. The effects of the curse become serious personality disorders as they repeat actions constantly or run about manically attempting to change everything they find. Examples like other people's minds, the fact that trees grow leaves, the Theron Empire's leadership. If a character enters the Citadel, they receive the full effects of the curse, for the Passions War enters them and are caught between pure order and pure chaos, alternating catatonia with mania. For each yard inside the walls, another test is made, increasing the difficulty number by 1 each time. So this is a massively, incredibly corrupted and cursed
area
location.
Yeah.
It does mention that Zarass has not ventured in yet.
Yeah, because she's who I want going in there.
Yeah, but she is, in one sense, being affected.
Yeah.
This is like one of those in order to lift the curse requires the intervention of a passion or some kind of epic quest, heroic effort on behalf of the cursed one's friends as they put up with the unfortunate victim's action. No one has figured out how to lift the curse on the Citadel itself. But this is potential Master and Warden tier epic things. But this is the other bit of things that is potentially preventing Zarass from being too much of a threat or thorn in the side of Krathis' efforts to build the nation. Because she is obsessed with this place and thinks that there is something there or in there that would help her in her ambitions
to become queen
in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, because she is not going to brook any quarter about anybody else. Nedden, Krathis, who doesn't align with her idea of orc freedom. She is absolutely going to move up that ladder and ascend the throne as fast as possible in her view. So she's got that kind of ambition and that kind of drive to do it with that kind of, I can't say attitude, but worldview is what I think the phrase I was looking for there. So yeah, she's a piece of work.
Yeah. So Zarass's troops, Zarass's tribe, such as it is less about taking a different approach to what an orc tribe can look like. Almost all of the other ones we've talked about thus far have been different takes on orcs and different varieties and kind of breaking that monoculture.
Yeah.
Zarass's situation is you've got this strong personality, this character that was introduced a while ago and who had story reasons to now sort of be involved in Cara Fahd.
Yeah.
But also at the same time being set up as kind of a potential antagonist or chaos agent, somebody that in future events, depending on what might have happened if we were talking about the original future development by FASA or something that might come into play later on, could throw a wrench into the works of whatever is going on. I imagine that in the build-up to the Second Theran War, where the treaties with Throal and the arrangements were being finalized, Zarass could have potentially caused some issues, and that might be something that could be used as a story hook as part of that larger story, if that's something that you want to investigate. But then it's also got this really weird, corrupted, cursed, supernatural citadel that is the source of conflict between two passions who essentially would be represent the conflict between Thera and Cara Fahd itself, especially at this stage of things where the book is written pre-Second War, you know, where you're down on the edge of Vivane province, you've got Vivane and Skypoint and all of that stuff, that the curse and the conflict in the Citadel is kind of representative or thematically linked in a way to the coming conflict between Thera and Cara Fahd.
Yeah.
And how Zarass may be kind of connected to that, or the potential situation where if you're looking at a more epic passions-themed quest or story arc for a high-powered game, especially if you're looking at one where investigating the possibility of healing or restoring the mad passions, Dis being one of them, obviously.
Yep.
There's not a lot of detail that's given here, but lots of potential things to hook other ideas and storylines and whatnot onto.
Oh, absolutely. You can play around with this for days.
Yeah. The conflict at hand here is that even if you're not doing a strong Cara Fahd focused campaign, if you're doing a campaign where there's a passions related storyline that could lead you to this citadel for some reason, that would then, because of Zarass's presence and everything, would end up hooking you in some capacity into the conflicts within Cara Fahd. So
yeah,
it's really interesting. There's some cool stuff going on here. You know, nothing notably different in terms of another take on orc culture, but one that takes everything that we've learned about orc culture, or that has been presented here in this book thus far, and turns it into an antagonist faction
Yeah.
After a fashion, using somebody who has been previously established within the game lore of having a reason to take that role.
Yeah. Everything bad you've heard about orcs is rolled up into Zarass and her chargers.
In some capacity, yeah.
I mean, right down to the point where she doesn't even like books or writing.
Yeah. And again, it's not that, oh, orcs are bad. She has a personality, she has a background, she has a temperament that is suited to being this character, to being this sort of individual. She's jealous, she's bitter, she's angry, she's frustrated, she's hungry for power and influence and wasn't able to get it where she was before and is now in a place where she thinks she's more likely to get it, but is being led down a pretty dark path as a result of her own personality and choices that she has made. Everybody else around her is like kind of waiting for the bomb to go off in a sense.
Tiptoeing and walking on eggshells, yes.
Yeah. Her father is like a little bit blind to what's going on with her. Yeah. He's always kind of felt that the rivalry between his two children was something that they would grow out of, or that Zarass would grow out of eventually. Yeah. But she has instead sort of embraced it even more heavily. Because he's not there, he doesn't really recognize what's going on. Getaft is, yeah, she's potentially dangerous, but she's not really a threat yet.
Yeah.
But just like, said, if you're going to deal with her, be careful.
Yeah, look, as you said,
she's a loose cannon, she's a wild card. If you give her reason to, she's likely to try and kill you.
Yeah, she'll snap at a moment's notice if she finds one thing to disagree with you about, because, as you said, she's being led down this path that she's charging headlong full speed into. So,
yeah, very impulsive, very passionate, but is being swallowed by those passions, both literally and figuratively. Yeah, when we talk about the curse and the citadel and whatnot.
And her inner feelings, yes.
Yeah, and just this feels like the makings of a Shakespearean tragedy, where you've got a character who has some pretty clear and obvious flaws and is sort of blind to them, and those flaws are what are eventually going to lead them to their downfall. And the question is ultimately, how many other people are going to end up dead as a result of it? That's the kind of situation that I see with her.
All of a sudden, I just got this flash that Zarass reminds me of Matthew McConaughey's character in Reign of Fire, the Zealot Dragon Slayer.
Okay, I haven't seen that movie in quite a while.
Yeah, just that he shows up, he thinks he's all that, and he's going to do it his way. And if you don't help him out, you're in his way, and he'll kill you. That's all there is to it. And all of a sudden, he's not that badass because he gets Ed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's ultimately a matter of she's pretty clearly in some regards being set up to take a fall.
Yeah.
And the question is, how many other people is she going to take down with her when that happens?
Yes, I agree. It's a fascinating character. Again, not much about the Chargers themselves, that whole tribe.
Well, there's not really much that needs to be said about them.
Agreed.
There's nothing special or unique about them in that regard, because everything revolves around her.
Yeah, as I said. Yeah.
The reason that there isn't, I mean, Getaft calls it out. Unlike the Foxes, unlike these other tribes that we've talked about, who all have some kind of common background, some kind of shared experience to draw from or to take as an identity.
Yeah.
Her troops don't have that, and they are looking for it, but she's not a particularly good leader.
She's not capable of providing what they're looking for, because they're a bunch of wannabes, and she's a zealot. And as long as she's got people behind her, she's going to blaze forward. But they're eventually going to come to the point where she doesn't know what she's talking about, and they'll eventually either abandon her or go full headlong zealot with her.
Yeah.
There won't be any middle ground.
Really interesting character. I like the situation that's sort of being set up here, and the potential story hooks and how that ties in both to the potential future of Cara Fahd and any problems that they might face, but also the Citadel itself, which is a very strongly corrupt and cursed location in the southern jungles, which is something that ties into the themes of the long-term scars and effects of the Scourge in a way that is perhaps a little bit easier to deal with than, say, the Badlands or the Wastes, which are such large areas.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to me like there's anything being set up as this is going to be easy to deal with, but it's small and it's contained.
I was going to say it's condensed.
Yeah.
It's all right here.
Outside the walls of the location is okay, but there's just super, super powerful passions magic that is going on there that's just outside of the realm of anything that anybody can really deal with.
Yeah, and we haven't come across anything that tainted by the passions yet in all of our investigations.
Not really.
No. So this is like, I can't say the only one, but this is at least the first one of very, very few that we might ever get to.
Yeah. The closest other example that we have, and I don't know whether we talked about it when we talked about Ristul, because we talked about the Abyss of Erasnahem.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially like the reason why the passions went mad.
Right.
But that is also tied into the horrors in a way that this one isn't.
Agreed. So lovely diatribe between the two of them as far as the letters are concerned and the sidebars.
Yeah.
So you get a nice view of things, and I love how Josh is able to expand upon it. I'm just going to add my 2 cents here and there as I did, but Josh has the other 98 cents in this whole thing. So this is a fun one. I think this is set up nicely for a character backstory, or as Josh pointed out, an antagonist or antagonist tribe. If you're in or around that part of Cara Fahd, have your characters run up against her chargers and see what happens. Roll those dice.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. So if you've done that, if you've used Zarass or her chargers in anything, by all means, drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And until then, avoid that citadel and this zealot for your legend.
Good night, everybody.